Good morning, everyone. I am here to discuss a case of a 6-year-old female who has been found deceased. John E. Mayer received a call in the evening of December 26, 1996, to report to an address identified as 755 15th Street, Boulder, Colorado. Around 8:20 p.m., he had arrived on scene and began his initial examination on the decedent, who had been found lying on the living room floor. It should be noted that the decedent and examiner were present during the initial examination. We are unaware at this time if family was present. Her face and body had been covered by a blanket and a Colorado Avalanche sweatshirt. Upon further examination, Mayer discovered she had been lying on her back with her arms extended into the air. Her head had been turned to the right, and ligature marks were found on the decedent's neck and right wrist. Also discovered was a small area of abrasion below the right ear on the lateral aspect of the right cheek, as well as a dried abrasion on the lower left neck. The initial examination was completed at approximately 8:30 p.m. After the completion of the initial exam, a more thorough second examination was conducted, the date and time of which is unknown, but due to the report being dated the 27th of December, we can infer that it was probably done sometime between the 26th and the evening of the 27th. The decedent, identified as John Benet Ramsey, who was 47 inches tall and weighed 45 pounds, was wearing a long-sleeve white knit collarless shirt with an embroidered silver star in the mid-anterior chest area. A white cord was found tied loosely around her right wrist. The decedent had been wearing long white underwear and white panties which had been stained with urine. The decedent had extensive injuries externally to her face and body. She had a petechial hemorrhage on the lateral aspect of the left lower eyelid on the inner conjunctival surface. Upon everting the left upper eyelid, smaller petechial hemorrhages had been found on the conjunctival surface, as well as bilaterally on the skin of the upper eyelids and left cheek. Wrapped around the decedent's neck was a white cord similar to the one found on the right wrist. Within the knot were strands of blonde hair located in the posterior aspect of the neck. Upon removal of the white cord, a deep ligature furrow was found, which encircled the entirety of the decedent's neck. Above and below the furrow are areas of petechial hemorrhage and abrasion. A rust-colored abrasion was located on the lower left neck. More petechial hemorrhages were located on the right side of the neck, which included smaller and larger hemorrhages. Located on the right side of the chin is a superficial abrasion. More petechial hemorrhages were discovered just above the deltopectoral groove, which is where the deltoid and pectoralis major muscles meet on the anterior left shoulder. 2 dried rust-colored abrasions were found on the left lateral aspect of the lower back. On the posterior aspect of the left lower leg were scratch-like abrasions which were dried and rust-colored. There is evidence to support the possibility of a sexual assault. A small amount of blood was found along the edges of the labia majora and on the skin of the fourchette and the vestibule. Hyperemia, or excess blood flow, was found in the vestibule of the vagina, as well as an area of purple-red abrasion on the hymenal orifice. The abrasion I had stated before involves the hymen and a distal right lateral vaginal wall. On the right of the labia majora is a very faint area of violet discoloration. A section of vaginal mucosa revealed that it contained vascular congestion and focal interstitial chronic inflammation. Erosion was noted along the vaginal walls where capillary congestion was found. A small amount of red blood cells were found on the eroded surface, as well as birefringent or double refraction foreign material. An examination of the heart, liver, and lungs showed abnormalities in the lungs and heart. There was a subpleural petechial hemorrhage on the surface of each lung, as well as subepicardial petechial hemorrhages on the anterior surface of the heart, both of which are congruent with mechanical asphyxia. An examination of the skull and brain revealed extensive trauma. There was an extensive area of scalp hemorrhage along the right temporoparietal area extending from the orbital ridge posteriorly all the way to the occipital area. At the superior extension of the area of hemorrhage is a linear comminuted skull fracture, which extends from the far right occipital to posterior parietal area forward to the right frontal area across the parietal skull. Within this fracture is a roughly rectangular-shaped displaced fragment of skull. Both the fracture and the hemorrhage extend posteriorly past the midline of the occipital area of the skull. A thin film of subarachnoid hemorrhage overlies the entire right cerebral hemisphere. Underneath the fracture I had stated before is an extensive linear area of purple contusion extending from the right frontal area, posteriorly along the lateral aspect of the parietal region and into the occipital area. The areas of contusion I previously discussed are characterized by purple linear, streak-like discolorations of the gray matter perpendicular to the surface of the cerebral cortex. Disrupted blood vessels of the cortex of the brain with surrounding hemorrhage and a subarachnoid hemorrhage were also identified. Multiple sections of the sternocleidomastoid muscle disclosed no hemorrhages, as well as the strap musculature of the neck. The hyoid bone was found intact with no evidence of fracture. There were no other notable traumas to JonBenet that have not already been discussed previously. Upon finishing the examination, with all injuries considered, the cause of death was determined to be asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma. This finding also gave the manner of death as homicide. Evidence that was taken from the scene and was turned over to the Boulder Police Department include hairs and fibers from clothing and body surfaces, ligatures, clothing, vaginal swabs and smears, rectal swabs and smears, oral swabs and smears, paper bags from the hands, fingernail clippings, jewelry, paper bags from the feet, a white body bag, samples of head hair, eyelashes and eyebrows, swabs from the right and left thighs and right cheek, and red top and purple top tubes of blood. The physical evidence that I would be interested in testing further would be the ligatures, clothing, and hairs and fibers. I believe that the ligatures could give us DNA if they happen to create an abrasion on the perpetrator as they were strangling her. The clothing, hairs, and fibers could also give us information on the incident that occurred. The clothing could contain fibers from other surfaces that she may have come in contact with, as told by the Locard exchange principle, which could give us insight into what happened to her that fateful night. The hairs, especially if they were found to not be from JonBenet, could give us an identification. The medical legal evidence that I would be interested in testing further would be the vaginal swabs and fingernail clippings. I believe this information would give a better definition as to how she was sexually assaulted. We would be able to discover from the vaginal swabs if this had been a penile penetration or if it were executed in some other way, such as digital or oral. The fingernail clippings could give us DNA if JonBenet happened to have scratched or attempted to fight off the person who was committing this heinous act against her. This is all the information we have at this time. I will update you as I begin to know more information.